Are we keeping our video on the whole time, even if we're not speaking, or are we just going to have the main speaker on?
Vinny, we recommend to keep it on just to turn off the microphone.
Are we keeping our video on the whole time, even if we're not speaking, or are we just going to have the main speaker on?
Yep, just Vinny, we recommend to keep it on just to turn off the microphone.
Are we keeping our video on the whole time, even if we're not speaking, or are we just going to have the main speaker on?
Yep, just Vinny, we recommend to keep it on just to turn off. Yep, Tiana, could you help us, please? Did you hear double, right? Or like 3 times? Yeah.
It might happen because we're recording it. So I don't care if we don't record it. Like if we, I mean, you need to record it to put it on your channel.
Yeah, actually, we always recorded that,
Oh,
but
okay.
just trying here. It's already full, but no problem with it. So we are live. Thank you very much to all our viewers today, and welcome to this Tourism Tech Adventures 2020. I'm Jose Ricardo Diaz from the Innovation, Digital Transformation, and Investments Department of the World Tourism Organization. And it's my pleasure to present this new edition of our series of innovation forums to gather all the innovation ecosystems. It is definitely a pleasure from UNWTO to start delivering a series on safe travel. And the first topic that we will deepen on is aviation technologies. We all are aware of this standstill and all the crises that we have had from the COVID-19 virus, but we truly believe that is innovation, digitalization, and all the new platforms, formats, and ways of innovating the ways in which we can recover and recover better. For the World Tourism Organization, it's definitely a priority, the sustainable, accessible, responsible, and inclusive development of tourism. And we are here to present a great set of panelists and solutions in this edition to make from air connectivity to tourism strategies, going through the marketing and communications as well, and afterwards with solutions that use part moving towards other systems for integrating privacy and identity solutions to make our industry and our sector better each day. In this regard, I welcome all of you from different sides of the ecosystem. We have as our target audience today, ministers from UNWTO member states, as well affiliate members. For sure, we are having innovators, startups, other government bodies, international organizations, destination marketing organizations, civil society, and the academia. We truly believe that uniting all these efforts are key to keep advancing for the tourism sector. So today we have gathered here thanks to the collaboration with ICF as an affiliate member of the World Tourism Organization. The UNWTO is the agency of the United Nations with this special feature of joining with the private sector from the affiliate members. And as well, one of the solutions presenting here is part of this program and department from UNWTO that is Beautiful Destinations. And I welcome all of you to definitely enjoy. So just a wrap up of our agenda, we are going through a panel. But before the panel, we are going to present our Innovation, Digital Transformation and Investments Director, Natalia Bayona. Afterwards, a panel from the air connectivity side with ICF. And after that, we are moving through all the solutions for safe travel. So I would love then to move onto some of the key priorities that from the innovation department we have before I give the floor to Natalia Bayona. So just to let you know a little bit more on it, we work on innovation from the competition side, and we identify the top solutions and the top entrepreneurs from all over the world in different topics such as gastronomy, rural tourism, sports tourism, or in general, such as deep technology, transportation, or connectivity as well for smart destinations. And we take them to the next level and we make them grow like a door openers to make definitely the connection with the corporates and with all the enterprises and all the corporations that work with us. And we do have these kind of forums that, as I already said, this is the first time that we have it in COVID times. And we do have our innovation network that I encourage you all to join. Be you part of the innovation ecosystem with UNWTO, allow you to enter these kind of events, getting expertise and going through the programs that I will let you know from the digital transformation side that are focused on accelerating skills. And I invite you to join us through the UNWTO Tourism Online Academy with free courses from tourism development. We will be uploading during the year different courses from top universities nowadays, working with IE from Spain, and we'll be uploading in different languages from all over the world, completely free. And I encourage you to join the MOOCs and the longer programs. As well, the acceleration programs. We do have an acceleration program this September on 23rd with Google. I encourage you to join as well and to check it out in our platforms. And on the investment side, what we do is connecting all these startups that we engage with and all these entrepreneurs that are engaged as well in the acceleration programs, and let them connect with the venture capital as well. We work with our members, say with high impact investments and cooperation. So this is a view from all the different stakeholders and how we can connect together for a better world. So let me introduce now to Natalia Bayona, our senior expert, that has become in this late week the director of Innovation, Digital Transformation and Investment from the World Tourism Organization, Natalia Bayona. Thank you, Natalia, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Jose, and thank you all of you for being here today. For us, it's really a pleasure to be with entrepreneurs and, of course, to talk about aviation technology. Today is one of our main pleasures to work regarding this reopenness of our tourism sector. And of course, as Jose was saying in the past, our main priority is, of course, to lead by example and to make tourism one of the top innovative sectors, but of course, one of the most inclusive and one of the most powerful in terms of reactivation. With that said, of course, there are a lot of things that we have to tell you today, but my main message is why tourism, sustainability and innovation have to be together. Basically, when we talk about innovation, of course, innovation is one of the key drivers, or technology is one of the key drivers, of course, to build a sustainable innovation ecosystem. So to bring governments, startups, entrepreneurs, corporations, institutions, investors together. Of course, if we want quality in the way tourism is fostering the economy, we need, of course, to pay back to the community. We need to work on waste management, on renewable energies, etc. And that's why we decided to launch the first Sustainable Development Goals startup competition. Like it's a global call in order to have entrepreneurs together, and of course to bring them opportunities to grow between governments and of course main institutions regarding tourism development. So where we are today, if we want to achieve those sustainable development goals, of course, we will need at least $6.9 trillion in infrastructure in order to achieve all the SDGs. So of course, there are a lot of challenges that were in the past and before COVID-19. The difference is that today for us, the challenges are the same. The only thing is that, of course, the challenges have been accelerated thanks to the pandemic. So of course, challenges as over tourism, as of course, waste management. I don't know if you know, but in the Mediterranean, for example, 40% of the wastes increases only in the peak season, that is summer. So of course, that's a challenge. When we talk about transport, of course, we have all the emissions and the sector will grow like 103% from 2005 to 2030 regarding the gas emissions. So that's crucial as well. So as tourism has one of the most largest economic value chain, because as you know, we have a lot of transversal subsectors that are helped thanks to tourism, that are communications, electricity, food, air transport, financial services, construction, etc. So that's why we need not only to innovate, but also to help others to gain new players, and of course, to help them to connect with entrepreneurs, with, of course, governments, and of course, with the private sector in order to scale up these ventures that are paying back to the society. So, of course, today, we are really excited because in that sustainability message, startups, of course, are crucial because they can increase the possibility to find out non-conventional solutions. And today, of course, we had invited ICF as a strong corporation regarding marketing strategy and innovation in the US, but to add value as well, the startups that are coming here are working either on scaling up processes, are working with the American government, and other ones are working with different corporations, with top corporations as well. And the most important thing, they are doing sustainable projects to travel safe again, but of course to travel in a good way and to help the airlines to, of course, to come back with that force that we need today. Because as you know, we need to recover trust and confidence, and the only way you can recover trust and confidence is, of course, promoting safe travels and safe protocols. But of course, they have to be digital, and they have to be really strong if we want, of course, to travel again as the way we were doing before COVID-19. And of course, just to end, I would like to give you some points about why digitalization and sustainability has to be in our new order. First of all, because, for example, that digitalization in aviation, travel, and tourism is expected to create a $305 billion of value in the industry by 2025. So only in 5 years, we will increase our digital growth. On the other side, the benefits of that digital growth would be valued at $700 billion for customers, and of course, a wider society that is focused on reducing the environmental footprint, safety, and security. So that's why working with entrepreneurs that are already thinking about different processes to travel is really the way we need to rebuild the tourism model, but to rebuild the tourism model the right way. And of course, regarding employment, as you know, thanks to the pandemic, from 100 or 220 million jobs are in risk thanks to the pandemic. So the opportunity here is, of course, not only to build your own venture, but also to bring added value solutions to the market. So that's why, as you know, women and youth are really beneficiated by the tourism sector, because of course is the most important economic sector that gives employment to women and youth. So with that said, creating an event today, creating innovation, bringing added value and quality things using artificial intelligence, virtual reality, big data analytics, augmented reality, Internet of Things, chatbots, etc., are part of how we can rebuild tourism sector, how we can bring opportunities to those that have taken the risk of being educated in a different way because have different digital skills. So this is really important to us, and that's why it's a top priority for us to bring and to empower digital and tech as the main driver if we want, of course, to create a more sustainable, innovative, and of course, inclusive tourism. So I would like to wish you all the best, and of course, to give a strong message to all the innovators that are listening to us today. I know that we have hundreds of people listening to us. I know that some of them are in streaming as well. So it's to us, it's an amazing opportunity to have youth, to have ministers, to have governments, to have corporates looking to the webinar today, because of course, our job as the UNWTO is to open opportunities for everyone. So here we are to strengthen once again more our tourism innovation ecosystem. So thanks a lot and have a strong journey and a very positive pitch journey today.
Thank you very much, Natalia, for this great welcome remarks from the Innovation Department. And now I will definitely invite you to our panel from ICF. So let me invite to the floor to Jared Harkham, Vice President and Managing Director of Aviation at ICF, with more than 35 years of experience in aviation, travel, and the tourism sector. After his presentation, Yolanda Perdomo will join him. She's tourism affiliate from ICF, and she has more than 20 years of experience, especially with public-private governance models and design of tourism products and management of destinations. And afterwards, we will have Shannon Lovick, Vice President of Marketing and Communication of ICF Next, that she has definitely had great experience with conventions and visitors bureaus, and with the awareness and engagement relevance for the world's largest brands. So welcome, Jared, Yolanda, and Shannon.
Thank you, Jose Ricardo. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Hi from Brooklyn, New York, and my colleagues are in Madrid and Minnesota. So we're glad we can be part of this with you. We're here today to talk a little about an integrated recovery of air transportation and tourism as kind of an essential part of the recovery that then blends with the technology we'll hear about a little later. This presentation has to do with our submission in the UNWTO Recovery Challenge a few months ago, and we hope that you'll find that useful. A quick introduction to us, so you know why we're here. I'm seeing a black screen. I don't know if everybody else is seeing that. But just so you know who we are, ICF is probably the largest consulting firm in the world that you've never heard of. But we're actually quite a large firm based in the US, but we have offices and work around the world in 70 countries. And one of the key things that our clients benefit from here is that we combine business analysis, policy specialists, digital, creative and communications folk, data scientists, and we not only advise, but we implement for our clients. So we think that kind of holistic view is useful. Next one, please. Well, while that comes up, to get back to the purpose of today, one of the sectors we have in our company is a very broad group of specialties that support the travel and tourism business, and this was part of the root of our submission for the recovery challenge at the UNWTO. And you can see that it encompasses a broad range of things, including tourism strategy, air connectivity, sustainability, marketing and communications, economic impact analysis, and general aviation consulting. And this is especially important now in our business to have this, to take a multi-faceted approach to the challenge of recovery, because the stakes are so high. We need to get it right. Otherwise, the losses of jobs and business will be ongoing. So today, the three of us are going to talk to you about three different areas: air service connectivity, tourism strategy, and the marketing communication, and how they all link together in this recovery effort. So if we can go on, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just a little bit, Jared, sorry to interrupt you. I will share my screen from my own computer just to make it smoother. Sorry for this technical inconvenience. I will be with you right away.
Thanks. While he's doing that, I'll just mention that, what we know today, obviously anyone on this call is aware of this, air service has been halted or drastically reduced, and what tourism destinations, cities, airports need to do is restore and replace that lost air service. But there needs to be an extremely proactive effort to do that. We can't assume that things are going to remain the same, or that service that we had before or airlines that we had before are going to be available to come back to us. So we can go to the next one, please. And what we're going to look at here in the next few slides is just some context that many of you know, but it's still good to focus on a little bit. And we know that the pandemic is changing the airline sector in every region around the world. And obviously this is critical for tourism connectivity. And any downsized or disappeared airlines is really a significant loss for the tourism sector. And this chart, we selected just one region as a region of the world as an example of what's happening. And Latin America and the Caribbean is seeing an awful lot. We have three of the major publicly traded full service network carriers all in restructuring. We have other carriers in restructuring outside of the courts. We have big multi-country brand airlines exiting specific markets in certain countries. We have another one in Mexico returning much of its fleet, so it'll be a significantly downsized airline. We have one of the oldest airlines in the Caribbean, Liat, that's shut down. We do have some good news. We see airlines like Azul and LATAM in Latin America forging partnerships and alliances. And then we do, despite all the bad news, have some good news. We have airlines that are betting on growth and doing things now to grow and expand. Volaris in Mexico, JetSmart in Chile. So it's good to know in your planning, who's going to be around, who's suffering, who has poor financial health, and who's not going to be very interested in taking risks, and who is. So these are examples from one region, but the same thing is going on in every region of the world. But in general terms, what we know, at least from the US, is that carriers are expecting to have fleets that are 20 to 30% smaller than they had before the crisis. And if I were a tourism destination, that would be quite worrisome to me, because I can't assume that the service I had before is going to come back. And I need a plan to do that, to do something about that. So we're going to have the next one, please. Here's some research that ICF did of our clients and industry contacts. And you can see this later, but I did just want to focus on a couple things that will specifically be related to tourism in today's presentations. One thing that passengers will expect to change in the long term is much more scrutiny of health conditions in their destination markets in the hotels and that sort of thing. And I think that plays very well to what we're going to hear later in the presentation. Another thing, unfortunately, bad news for the tourism sector is we expect to see a significant reduction in demand for conferences and other large events, at least for a couple of years. Airlines obviously are already acting on this, but customers are going to expect strict new hygiene controls, and that's not only in the airports, but in airlines, but in the airports. Finally, the issue keeps changing rapidly. You know, we've seen countries and even states and cities talk about quarantine and 14-day quarantines, which have been revealed to be really disastrous and put the brakes on our recovery. And what's really needed is a switch to testing, especially on-site and on-demand testing, and that seems to be coming into play in specific places quickly, and that's a bit of good news. Next one, please. A couple more bits of the research that'll affect the tourism community, and you know, we know that business and travel and tourism travel are quite linked. So some of these questions have a little bit to do with the business community, but it's all really the same the same industry. So you know, we know that companies, nearly 60% of companies have suspended all travel during the crisis, and another 40% suspended all but essential. So really this very lucrative sector is going away. And then 2/3 of the companies have said that they would only resume travel once there's a cure or a vaccine. So we still got some time to go on that front. And then once the pandemic is over or under control, those companies would spend less money. Half of them would spend less money. So for those of us in, hotels, airlines, restaurants, tourism, theme parks, whatever, all of this is alarming news. Nothing, again, that sets the stage for why we need an integrated approach to recovery. One thing that comes out of this is that airlines, full service airlines that have traditionally been focused on serving the business traveler are now all of a sudden interested again in focusing on the leisure traveler. So for destinations and tourism stakeholders, that's actually a bit of good news. So we have, more interest from carriers that maybe didn't want to, put their resources in handling lots of lower yielding leisure travel. The next one, please. This is a time frame chart for the crisis and the recovery. And most of this, I think we all have intuitively at this point. I think we would know that we're in the pre-recovery phase at this point with domestic travel resuming, but very spotty border opening policies by different countries. We're expecting what we call VFR and leisure traffic to start first and business travel later, as we just saw. But what we need to do now and what's happening is convincing customers that traveling is safe again, and we need to start planning for the post-pandemic air service now, because the spotty air service that we have is not going to be sufficient. So as we go on to the recovery phase, that's a little bit what we'll talk about in the rest of this presentation. So we could go on to the next slide. What we know about air service is that it's declined and it's recovering in some places. This chart looks at some sample countries and a global average. And as we have all probably followed from the press, China is the only market that's recovered its air service to anything like former levels. Everything else is down below. And if you look on the right-hand side, the global average is around 40%. Many of the countries are still in that range, and the United States is actually lower than that. So even though there's been some recovery, it's still nothing like what we need to get the industry back on track. Next one, please. But there is, and there's some differentiation there. This chart has just selected 3 sample countries to look at: China, France, and the US. And it's to illustrate that the domestic markets are the ones where the recovery is taking place, and the international are still suffering, even in the case of China. So the dotted lines that you see on that chart are the international service levels, and the solid lines are the international. So if you look at China, the red one at the top, 92% of the domestic service has recovered, but way down at the bottom, only 12% of the international has recovered. And obviously the international travelers are the ones who spend the most when they travel, but be they business or leisure. So the fact that our international travel is still languishing is really worrisome for us. Let's go to the next one, please. And then there's another factor. One of the factors is that we've seen airlines begin to publish air service again, but then what we're seeing, and the data on this chart illustrate that, is that they don't actually fly all of what they've published. So the news may be good in that we look at the screens in front of us and say, oh, there's this good service. But this data that we're looking at compares what was actually published versus what was actually flown. So on the right-hand side, it's the EU and the UK, and the light blue line is flights that were actually operated, and the dark blue line is what was published. And you see some pretty significant gaps there in terms of that. So again, not good news, especially for tourism. So what we recommend and what we do for some of our clients is a diagnostic of what air service was before, what airlines are still around to serve the destination, what kind of financial health those airlines are in, what's happening to their fleet, have they changed the strategy, have they closed operating hubs and bases, and generally what's their appetite for taking risk. So the industry is not the same as it was 6 months ago. The carriers you may have taken for granted maybe aren't going to be back. Even if they publish the service, they still may not operate it and be bringing back what you need. So there needs to be more of an organized and proactive plan. And we'll see on the next slide that just a quick summary of what we've done for one of our clients. It's the island of Lanzarote, and off the Spanish island off the coast of Africa. And before the crisis began, this destination was extremely well served with 48 point-to-point routes to Europe, and another 14 routes that were either to hubs or focus cities. And again, much of that service has been republished, but not operated. And a number of these airlines have gone into some sort of restructuring, shutting down operating bases, and all kinds of other problems. So what we were, one of our tasks, and we'll see it in the next chart, please, is to identify new replacement air service. And in this specific case, the new air service we identified is linking with a repositioning of the island for a different kind of tourist that was underway even before the pandemic came to us. So what we wanted to do is have this destination rely a little bit less on point-to-point flights from second and third level cities. So we've been identified hub markets and hub airlines that not only have strong local markets to resort destinations, but also offer dozens, if not hundreds, of connecting cities behind the hub. But in addition to that, offer a really good match for the premium sector, which we're now targeting. And premium level passengers want the attributes that a premium airline offers, not only a business class cabin on the flight, but lounges and pre-boarding and all kinds of other amenities. So what we're doing here is matching the type of air service that the island will have after the crisis is over with the reality of the high quality offering that the island provides, and with the marketing and communications campaign that will follow. So I think that's the last part of that. And I'm going to now pass the presentation over to Yolanda Perdomo, who will talk about this program from the standpoint of tourism strategy. Over to you, Yolanda.
Thank you so much, Jared. And the question here is, how do we integrate this diagnostic, these insights produced by the aviation and air connectivity team to produce a more comprehensive tourism strategy, which works much better for destinations? If we can go to the next slide, and actually to the next one, I'm going to use some examples. I think it's better to understand what we do. And I'm going to start with a project we carried out in Hokkaido in the north of Japan 2 years ago. In Japan, they were privatizing 7 airports in this big island in Hokkaido. The government did something quite unusual and I think very visionary. They asked the airport operators to generate a tourism strategy, which is something they never do. They asked the airports to think like a DMO, like a destination management organization. Why did they do that? Because they had a challenge, a social challenge. They need to keep their connectivity as it was. They need to keep the transportation for the locals as it was, but it was not sustainable if you with the population they have right now, because it's aging and the youngsters are going to mainly to Tokyo and Osaka. So the only solution they had is tourism. They said, if we have more people coming to these destinations, particularly to the east part of Hokkaido, we will solve that problem and it will be sustainable to maintain those air connections and those trains and so on, and the services the local population needs. So they had really a political challenge there. So if you go to the next slide, I'm gonna show you what we did. Obviously the problem there was, how do we attract more tourists? How do we make them use those airports that were less served, especially in the north and east part of Hokkaido? And we use all this expertise and all this data that was produced by the aviation team to think how to do it. We came up with a conceptual approach, which is called Hokkaido Sichi. Sichi means 7 in Japanese, is a positive number, it symbolizes togetherness. And we said, well, this is a great idea to begin with, because we're gonna create this idea of a 7-pointed start that interconnects these 7 areas where these airports are. So people will think of a destination as a whole, and they will visit all parts of Hokkaido. And how are we going to do that? Well, we saw where the potential outbound markets were for Hokkaido, existing ones and new ones, and what these potential visitors were looking for. How would Hokkaido satisfy their needs? We studied what Hokkaido was offering, what their potential, what its potential was, and we matched that with what these potential visitors were looking for. So we created 4 lines of specialization, and the idea was to portray a unique mixture of these 4 segments. They would be different in every one of those 7 destinations you see here in this start on the right. And therefore, you would have a reason to go to all those places, because we were able to showcase that you need to go to the different parts of Hokkaido to experience, for instance, gastronomy in different ways, in the Japanese way, or sports, or nature-based tourism, or wellness, the well-being as a whole in these different parts of Hokkaido. So that's how we integrated both approaches. If we go to the next slide, I'm going to show you a different example. And this second example took place in Malta. If we can go to the next slide, please. In here, the situation is completely different. Now we're talking about a destination in the Mediterranean, very successful. And our client was the airport. And actually, we're finishing this project right now. In here, the question of the airport was, should we keep on growing? Obviously, this was started before the pandemic. Should we keep on growing? Are we offering the right products to keep on growing successfully or not? What are the next trends? How can we, see what's going to happen in the future, and if we are really meeting those requirements that the visitors are going to ask in the future? And if so, should the airport grow? And if so, when do we have to build it? I mean, when do we have to build this new part of the airport so that we use the resources in the best possible way? That's a very interesting question. It's very unusual. The request was, please produce a sustainable tourism strategy for an airport. So then again, somehow they were thinking as a destination management organization. And then again, we mixed what the team in aviation and the air connectivity knew and the forecasting they were producing with what we do when we create a tourism strategy. And they had a number of challenges. And we produced this strategy, which is under the umbrella of the sustainability agenda, obviously totally fully aligned with the SDGs that has 4 pillars. A proposal in terms of value proposition, a proposal in terms of infrastructure, a proposal in terms of visitor experience, how to improve it, and also in terms of stewardship and stakeholder alignment. If we go to the next slide, I'm going to show you the third and final example, and it takes place in Lanzarote, the island that Jared mentioned before. Here we started the project before the pandemic. The request there was, we want a strategy to reposition Lanzarote in the premium destination. It was a position it had historically before during the 70s. And now the local stakeholders, both the private and the public stakeholders, say, we want to recover that kind of positioning. We want to attract less tourists that are, we want to have a more sustainable model. Actually, Lanzarote was the best biosphere destination in the world in the 90s, and at the time people started to talk about sustainable tourism there before they did in many other parts of the world. So there's a tradition there to work this way. We started to work on this strategy. The team of aviation and air connectivity started to look for potential inbound markets, new ones, to decrease the high dependency on a single market, namely the British one. And we match both approaches once again. It was perfectly fine before the pandemic, but now it's even more useful. I mean, because the requirements of a premium traveler are actually the requirements of a traveler in the pandemic era. So I think we're doing just the right thing. We had another question there that I think it can be it can inspire other destinations. This request at the time came from the private sector. Then the public sector joined, so it became a public-private partnership project. But then something else happened. More than 120 private sector stakeholders joined the project. And under my point of view, this would have never happened before the pandemic. This challenge we have right now became an opportunity. And because of the hard times we're going through, they decided to work together. 120 competitors from different parts in the value chain working together. If somebody told me that would happen in Lanzarote 1 year ago, I would never believe it. And it has happened. So we have to read also this situation we have in a positive line and see and read every opportunity we can reach. We have produced a roadmap for the specialization and also this approach to these new inbound markets Jared has explained before. Obviously, we have incorporated how to manage these COVID-19 impacts, and it's aligned with the branding and communication strategy, aligned with what Shannon is going to explain afterwards. If we go to the next slide, because I'm finishing right now with 2 more slides. As you have seen, I have mentioned the word sustainability all the time, because we truly believe that this needs to be fully incorporated in everything we do. And not only the environmental part, but also the social and economic sides of sustainability. And in everything we do, in these methodologies, in these strategies I have shown before, we always incorporate a shared value approach because we want to engage everybody. It's not theory. We want everybody to go beyond corporate social responsibility and to produce a joint project in which they can really generate a positive impact for the destination and include the travelers, the tourists, so that the tourist also knows that when they visit this destination, they can leave a positive impact after they have gone, they have traveled to that destination in particular. If we go to the next one, this is a summary of what I have explained of this holistic approach to how to manage a destination, incorporating aspects that normally were not incorporated before. It has 12 steps, and it does everything, obviously, segment specialization, the inbound target markets, the adjustment, the governance model, the shared value project I mentioned before, but also the air service connectivity, done at the same time from the very first minute and not at the end when you have designed your product and everything else, and things like capacity building or a process to keep on innovating all the time. And the last slide, please. And this is the message I think we need to keep in mind. These are times of incredible disruption. Everything has changed. And but as I said, in the case of Lanzarote, this creates opportunities. And these opportunities are very complex. There is a lot of complexity that we have to manage because there are a large number of stakeholders. We need to make sure that what we do is also sustainable, inclusive, innovative, is technology driven, and so on. And this leading with this complexity requires an outstanding strategy, an integrated one, a complex one. And to have that, you need collaboration more than ever. Before it was important, but now it's just necessary because nobody can do this alone because of the complexity I'm mentioning. Not even a government, not even the private sector collaborating, not even a big company alone. Nobody can do this alone. Now we have to make sure everybody works together, and to make sure this works, we need leadership. To have leadership, you have to have legitimacy and therefore a clear governance model and a business model if you're creating a new paradigm for this destination. So the idea is that destinations need to get ready for what is coming after. Dealing with COVID is very hard and we have to deal with that every day, but we also need to think ahead and to make sure we understand what we're gonna do in the post-COVID-19 scenario. Now, destinations need to build a competitive advantage. Destinations need to operate all the changes that you could not implement before because it was not possible because of the existing dynamics. You know, maybe the destination was very successful, you have a lot of visitors, the numbers were great, so nobody would change what was working, but everybody was aware that it was not sustainable. And at the same time, it was very difficult to operate those changes. So now we have the opportunity to operate those. And that requires experts of different fields working together with a holistic approach. It requires having expertise coming from disciplines that have never been fully integrated before in a tourism strategy. We need talent from other fields. And you know, afterwards, after this pandemic, destinations will be competing fiercely. And those who do their pending homework now, those who dare to operate the right changes now, those who are brave enough and base their next steps on a greater strategy, those destinations will succeed. Thank you so much. And now, Shannon Lovich, you have the floor.
Great, thank you, Yolanda and Jared. If you move to the next slide. So whether you're a destination, hotel, an airline, I think the most challenging aspect of this COVID pandemic is really that you're processing a ton of information really in real time. So what I wanted to share is you think about your marketing strategy as sort of a simple yet powerful formula that can really give you the chance to gut check. So gut checking your efforts. So continue to, from a traveler choose standpoint, how are we tracking the ever changing consumer sentiment? So for example, right now we know there's a ton of anxiety about travel. That's nothing new, but something more interesting from a marketing standpoint is that travel has actually become as divisive as politics, and people are behaving much differently when they are traveling. They may not be touting their travel or sharing their travel the way they have in the past, but actually hiding it and not sharing on social media. So how does that, impact the way that you're marketing? From a cultural standpoint, that can mean a lot of different things. Yolanda talked a lot about sustainable travel and the importance of that and what people care about. I think one interesting thing that we're also starting to see is something that goes even further than sustainable travel. That's regenerative travel. So leaving a place, even better. Those are sort of big long-term things that we think about from a cultural standpoint and what people care about. But from a short-term standpoint, we look at how they're traveling, how that's changed. Maybe that means road trips. We've seen across, Europe and the US, this increase in the idea of camper vans, motorhomes, RV travel. And then of course, moving on to your brand truth. So how can you remain true to your brand or the evolution of your brand? Like we were talking about with Lanzarote, this is a critical time to take a look at your brand and kind of determine what do you stand for, how do you need to evolve your ownable points of differentiation? Can you borrow equity from a partnership? And so I'm going to share a few different examples in the next slides, if you want to go to the next slide, of how we use this formula to gut check the work that we're doing. Now, Belize is a very interesting case study, and I could talk for a half an hour just about Belize and all the things that we've done there. And this is really sort of pre-COVID, but really speaks to some of those three key areas: the traveler truth, cultural truth, and brand truth. And what we recognized with Belize is that, when we first started working with them, they were really looking to compete against some pretty heavy hitting destinations and attract really the same target from North America. And what we recognize is that they have, a very different product, and therefore we need to be targeting a very different audience. So we really uncovered this idea of a traveler versus a tourist. So a traveler is someone who wants to have a more transformative cultural experience, and that's something that Belize could offer. And they would really appreciate the authentic and unexpected experience in Belize. So when we sort of put that traveler, cultural, and brand truth together, that was incredibly successful from a marketing communications standpoint. We actually saw the GDP related to the marketing efforts increase 3.3%, as well as a 95% year-over-year increase in tourism over the 5 years that we've been working on Belize. So that's sort of a big, broad example and really a simplification of a very complicated effort, but it gives you an idea of how we can still use that formula to gut check our strategy. If you go on to the next slide, hotels.com, and this is actually, a really small sort of activation, but speaks to a bigger strategy in how we've had to move very quickly within COVID. Naturally, their business took a pretty big hit during COVID. People were not staying in hotels. Very similar to what Jared showed you from an airline standpoint, that same trend was happening with hotels, and just people were not staying at hotels. But they started to get out and started to take some of these road trips. And one of the big trends was, these RVs. And so we actually took a little bit of a different route and really took a bit of a jab at that idea of RVs, where, you know, everyone thought, well, this is going to be great. I'm going to buy an RV and fix it up, or I'm going to rent an RV, and then realizing, well, it may not be as comfortable. You actually have to drive, and sort of using those elements to remind people of the great things about hotel life. So robes, slippers, pools, again, not driving, and we quickly turned around in activation. And there are really, this is part of a strategy that includes many activations that continue to remind people of the great elements of hotel life. And we invited people to trade in the RVs that they may have purchased for hotel gift cards. So that's, again, a very small activation, but just shows, you know, how we can, you know, creatively and quickly shift based on some of the cultural truths that we are learning about really on a daily and weekly basis in terms of consumer behavior. The next slide, please. I think, you know, Delta is, we do a lot of brand listening and work for Delta to help inform them of, you know, what consumers are saying, what's happening culturally. And I think, you know, their response to the pandemic has just been really impressive, and that they had a brand strategy that they have kept. They've maintained the brand strategy that they've had prior to this pandemic, and they've evolved it based on this pandemic. So the idea prior to this was to continue to lean into transparency and have a very customer forward strategy. Now you see this come to life through the pandemic with this, you know, this idea with airlines about, you know, regarding middle seats. So this has been an interesting thing to watch, and I'm sure many of you have been watching it, where this, like the middle seats, right? So Delta said, we are committing until January 6th because of the safety and health of our customers to not sell this middle seat. Meanwhile, United and American are selling every available seat. And, you know, based on this and some of they partnered with Lysol, you know, to really borrow some equity and innovate in travel hygiene. Again, positioning all of this as this customer forward strategy. And the CEO has said that they believe that the strength of their brand continues to improve despite the pandemic. So this is really working for them from a brand building standpoint, and hopefully will contribute to the longevity of their brand through this and beyond. Next slide, please. So that is just a very quick sampling of some of the work that we do, very different types of work within marketing communications, from a big, broad, total branding effort to, you know, some of the activations within PR and social and brand listening. But we work across airlines, hotel chains, airports, and destinations. You can see just some of the clients that we work with here. And again, in many of these situations, this is interconnected and starts with that process that Yolanda shared. So, you know, starting with an air connectivity strategy to a tourism strategy, all the way through bringing the brand to life through marketing and communications. So thank you. We really appreciate the time from ICF and ICF Next, which is the commercial marketing arm of ICF. We thank you for the time today and giving us the opportunity. Our information is on the next slide. Should you have any follow-up questions for us or want to talk further, we're all available to do that.
Well, thank you very much to all the team from ICF. Just to wrap up a little bit on all these key messages that you have sent to us through innovation and through the strategy side, is that definitely the understanding beyond isolated services to meet all together from a comprehensive view, tourism, transportation, communications, and all in a great effort for all the destinations, meaning to always revise strategies such as repositioning, changing routes, coming from new markets, going into the diagnostic in order to move forward, to treat airports as DMOs, and to start analyzing all the cultural truth to make a great communication strategy. So I would love now to move on these solutions, and just a quick change in our agenda. We will go with Paul Mayer from Common Project. You all will have 5 minutes to pitch your solution to all the ecosystem that is watching us today. Thank you very much, and welcome, Paul.
Great, thanks so much, and thank you for including me today. I wanted to share a briefing on the Common Pass Initiative, which is an initiative that's been launched as a collaboration between the World Economic Forum and the Commons Project, the organization I lead. The Commons Project is a nonprofit public trust established with support from the Rockefeller Foundation to build and operate digital services for public good. Really services that need to exist in the world, but that fit in between things that governments do and things that the private sector does. And our kind of recognition was that there are certain services that really do need to operate effectively as shared utilities to bring together entire ecosystems and operate as common shared services for the public good. We launched the initiative. We've spent the last 2 years building a platform called Common Health, which is a platform for individuals using Android phones to collect, store, and share their health data. It's the equivalent for the Android ecosystem to what Apple has done with Apple Health. So it grows out of many years of basically health data interoperability and being able to aggregate health information. That was sort of what led to this. The initiative that we've launched with the World Economic Forum is, and now we're working with many countries around the world on this, is really designed to solve a simple problem that every country is now dealing with. And countries, as we've just heard, and if everyone here knows, are struggling to figure out how can we carefully reopen borders in a way that protects our population's health. It was interesting to see the data, the domestic travel versus international travel statistics, which I think kind of makes this point. But in thinking about how to open borders safely, countries are grappling with a simple challenge, which is ultimately, how can we trust a lab result or a vaccination record from another country? And that's the fundamental question that we're designed the Common Pass framework to try to solve for on a global and globally interoperable basis. Because if you think about it, if a country can't trust data, health information from the country, they almost are compelled to retain travel bans and the quarantines that we all know have ground global travel and tourism to a halt. Conversely, if they can trust data, they can actually implement more nuanced policies. They can say, okay, I can allow someone to come from this country if they've had a negative PCR test or if they've had a vaccine. I think it's important to also really point out that we're talking about, obviously we are all, the world is looking forward to the arrival of vaccine, but this is not going to be a panacea. There will be multiple kinds of vaccines. We won't know how long they last. Not everyone will have them. So this challenge is not a challenge that will go away. We're going to be dealing with this for a long time to come before travel and tourism gets back to pre-pandemic era. We're going to need to solve for the problem. So what have we launched under the guidelines of the International Health Regulations, which is the global multilateral agreement that allows countries to basically look at health information for the purposes of admitting people. WEF and then the Commons Project launched Common Pass. And what is it very simplistically? It allows someone to get tested or eventually vaccinated before they travel. Let that data be available to the framework. It's checked against the rules engine that embodies countries' rules, and it generates effectively a travel certification. Green or red, do you satisfy the rules? That's the essence of what it does. What the key questions it's really solving for, if you think about that simple question, is, is the lab or vaccination facility accredited or verified? What kind of test was it? When was it? What was the result? Is this the same person? And do they meet our entry criteria? So as we're partnering with governments, we're working with them to create registries of the trusted labs in their country, a common model using standard health data interoperability standards to let that data flow, a privacy preserving model for linking those vaccination records to the travel ID, and a framework for countries to publish their entry screening requirements. And then a rules engine to say, okay, Paul wants to fly from New York to London. Based on the information he's presented, does he satisfy London's entry requirements? Yes or no? And so that's really simplistically the way it works. again, it's designed so that that data, whether from a lab result or vaccination record, either stays at the lab, goes into a registry, into an electronic medical record system, or into a personal health record system. The framework then says just what I said. Does Paul's data come from a trusted lab on the trusted registry, satisfy the UK's entry requirement, red or green? And that red or green can either be presented or embedded in APIS flows and intake flows. Being architected this way, where the data doesn't actually convey, the data stays at the source or in the person's control, means that ultimately you can do this in a way that is consistent with data privacy principles and regulatory constraints. So one of the messages in July, we convened over 350 public and private sector leaders from over 50 countries, and have engaged with many countries and at the prime minister and ministerial level from many countries around the world. One of the key messages, which I think is really important given the global nature of this dialogue, a message that came through loud and clear is this needs to be operated as an interoperable framework. We're all talking about bubbles and corridors, but ultimately bubbles and corridors need to connect. This has got to be something that ultimately works from a passenger coming from anywhere to anywhere. One of the countries that's gotten most engaged is Japan, because of course Japan is looking forward to hosting the Olympics next summer. And if you're hosting the Olympics, you can't get there through bubbles and corridors. Ultimately, you need athletes and visitors to come from every country. So we're working with ministries of health, with border agencies, with lab partners and travel stakeholders in each of the countries that we're working with. So we're working with the ministries of health to help to create these registries of certified labs and vaccination sites, to determine those screening requirements, working with border agencies to publish those requirements in a standard format, and would be willing to accept visitors through this mechanism. Obviously working with labs to be able to present make their data available, and travel partners to integrate this into their workflows. We're launching at the end of the month between London and New York. We're working with most of the world's airlines, most of the world's leading airports, and as I mentioned, many governments. The governments are acting as observers of the pilot, because really what we're trying to show here is by creating this end-to-end trust chain between health data in one country through a passenger as they board and want to travel, that creates policy options for governments to say, okay, now that I can trust this information, I can think about a more flexible and potentially relaxing, for example, quarantine requirements or some of the other things. And so that's what we're doing. We're working, as I mentioned, with over 30 countries and have formed working groups with border agencies, health agencies. We're creating a working group chaired by the World Economic Forum around tourism and industry, and then public-private working groups. So welcome participating countries who are not yet engaged with to join us in building this as a common global utility. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul, for this great introduction to a Commons project, and we encourage all our audience to check it out after this webinar, after this TDA. So now I'm moving towards more solutions for safe travel. I welcome Jessica Puddle from Earthside Mobile, and the three next solutions that you will see, they have been awarded as top solutions from the UNWTO Healing Solutions for Tourism Challenge that was created to address all these problems and obstacles from the COVID-19 and turning them into the opportunities for safe travel. So thank you very much, Jessica, for being with us. Earthside Mobile with you.
Thank you. Okay. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. Thank you for joining us and for the opportunity for Earthside to be able to present today. So just a little bit about us. Earthside is the leading pioneer in digital identity and privacy management. Our vision is privacy for everyone, everywhere in an information sharing world. And our mission is to empower our customers with the most secure and convenient solution for managing and sharing information without compromising integrity. We're best known for our first consumer app, which is called Mobile Passport, which has enabled a number of citizens to be able to speedily experience the passport control and customs process here in the United States. And what we've done is take that digital identity concept and expand it into other areas of our lives, including various areas of travel. So breaking it down a little bit further, the Airside Digital Identity Network has two major parts. On the consumer side of things, the consumer has the Airside app, and they're able to use it to grant consent to share their information with full transparency on what, with whom, why, and for how long their information needs to be accessed. This app is available on iOS and Android and is free for customers to use. On the relying party side, so this can be any travel provider throughout the journey. It is global. We have a set of proprietary APIs that we provide to them to help verify and access information on a consent basis without any storage liability. So this is really helping them to reduce the burden of complying with privacy regulations, and they're paying for it on a transaction fee basis. So a little bit more about the Airside X APIs, which are our proprietary APIs. We really use them to empower an interoperable encrypted ID account service. And what's important about this is it's enabling travelers to enroll just once for all of their information. It may be a passport, it may be other relevant travel documents. In this day and age of COVID, it's also enabling them to enroll their COVID test results as well, and that may be virology or serology. Everything we do is completely consent driven. We believe that every person should always be in full control of their own information. And our entire network is privacy by design. So data should be stored in a decentralized way, exchanged securely, and always encrypted. So we were in the process of developing this digital identity network, over the last couple of years, and had a number of solutions and use cases that we had already developed. When this COVID crisis emerged, we really decided to use our digital identity network to create 3 major travel recovery programs to help enable the recovery of our industry. And so those 3 programs are testing. We've tied up with a number of labs, here in the United States, and we're in the process of growing that network globally to enable for both employees and travelers to be able to add their virology and serology results to their digital identity. We have a public health program that allows us to partner with governments who may be looking to digitally collect symptomology information, testing information, and so on, and all of that can be enabled through our app. And finally, seamless and touchless. And so while we have been partnering with travel companies around the world on exploring biometric options, what I think there's a heightened demand in this area, in that where we've moved from operational efficiency and a surprise and delight for travelers to be able to breeze through their airport experience, that this is really also providing an additional benefit of being touchless throughout the airport as well, and reducing crowds, which is reducing the risk of spread. What we've heard from customers is really important to them in terms of key considerations as part of the solution are 3 major things. So security, many of these solutions are reliant on access to additional sensitive personal information. And so it's really important that they're looking for their providers to have the highest levels of data security and encryption. Privacy, so where this concept of sharing your COVID test results or other sensitive information has come up, it's really important that data privacy be taken into account, not just from the customer's point of view, but of course from the travel company's point of view. They're very concerned about their ability to meet a rising number of privacy regulations around the world, such as GDPR, CCPA, PIPEDA, and so on. And finally, reliability. So where there are solutions out there that are allowing for travelers to be able to self-report certain things, where a chain of custody can be maintained from a lab result straight through the travel provider, I think that there's additional level of reliability and a heightened duty of care that they're able to meet, from the travel provider's perspective. So a little bit about the testing profile. We are working with travel organizations to set standards for when and how either travel employees or travelers can share their test results to return to work or return to traveling. And we're able to confirm these results and pass them on to travel providers before the traveler is arriving at an airport, a cruise port, a hotel, or any other part of their trip. So there's, again, the ability to reduce the spread. And a mobile solution enables individuals around the world to quickly adopt. So what this looks like in particular is that the individual is able to download the Airside app. They're able to request on a consent basis to add their COVID or antibody test result to their profile. And then in their services tab, they can share in a variety of ways. They can share with their work, they can share with their bank or their school, or in our case, what we're talking about here is travel. And so they're able to share with their airline, their cruise line, their hotel, their destination, or more. And there's a full activities log provided in which they have a audit log of anywhere that their sensitive data has been shared. So a specific flow would be Jane, our Airside customer in this case, is able to share her verified identity in order to get at the lab in order to tie her test result to her identity. Then she's able to consent to have that information added to her profile, and that same result in a single app with a single ad can now be shared in multiple places with either her employer, her travel providers, or outside the travel experience, which is important, I think, because it reduces the friction for adoption and heightens how many, heightens basically how many people would adopt, because there's various use cases that are provided adding value for a consumer to download. Our public health solution is an easy way for individuals to share either their contact details or a symptomology questionnaire with local public health officials at, it could be at the city or state level, or it could be at the country level as well. We're able to customize these forms within a few days. And so the solution's available today and can be easily stood up for your location or your destination. And what's important about this is that we're able to provide a privacy-based solution. So where contact tracing or contact information sharing has come up, there's been a lot of feedback in the press about citizens' concerns about how and where their data is stored and shared and what kind of control they have. This is a privacy-based solution that's allowing travelers to feel more comfortable in participating. So again, the way the flow works here is you would select the traveler or travelers. They're inputting their information, which would include their travel information. They can add their contact information as well as any required symptomology from that particular public health area. And they're able to, with full transparency, see their consent. And then there's a couple of different options. They can either show it to a local border agent, or they can submit it in advance of flying or sailing, or any other way that they're entering the country. And finally, our touchless and seamless travel. So what's important here is really that an individual can use the same app throughout the airport and in multiple destinations throughout their trip. So whether I have connecting flights, whether I'm going to multiple destinations, not having to re-enroll my information in multiple places is reducing that friction, increasing compliance, and making it easier for travelers to seamlessly move about their trip in a safe way. We are tech agnostic, so we work with a variety of matching technology providers, and we have certain integrations that already exist, and we're open to working with any matching provider you may have chosen for your destination. And just a couple of stats about us. In our broader digital identity network, including Mobile Passport, we do have 8.8 million members for whom we've been able to provide 12 million convenient experiences and save 2 million hours. We're able to scale up to process 100,000 transactions a second. So we are able to take on the world's travel transaction volume. And we're currently aligned with 4 of the Sustainable Development Goals. As Jose mentioned, we were named one of the top solutions for the Healing Solutions Tourism Challenge by UNWTO. And you can see a few of the major publications who have cited us as a leading solution over the past few years. That's it. I encourage all of you to please reach out at the website provided here, or reach out on LinkedIn, and I appreciate everybody's time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jessica, for presenting us the technology behind the mobile passport And now we move towards our third solution here, and it's beautiful destinations. Let's move on, the branding and the marketing side for destinations. Welcome, Elizabeth Linder, its Executive Director.
Wonderful, Jose. Thank you so much. And it's wonderful to meet everyone here and see some friends and some new faces as well. It's really a pleasure for Beautiful Destinations to be part of the affiliate network of the UNWTO. And we thank you so much for that wonderful opportunity to participate in the Healing for Destinations program, which was incredibly important for our industry in such a challenging and such a difficult time. As many of you know, I have my background in California technology at Google, YouTube, and Facebook in the communications and public policy side of those companies. And one of the biggest challenges that we have in the 21st century in terms of the communications environment is really bringing together the world of policymaking and of public affairs with the world of storytelling and creative development. And that's going to be a challenge that's going to stick with us for quite a while. Historically, as many of us know, the marketing, branding, creative, storytelling side of any given organization would fall within more of a PR messaging standpoint. But in today's world of democratized information and the dissemination of information, people are not only looking for a marketing campaign, but they're also looking for information. And historically, the policymakers and the public affairs units at the corporate or at the government level who are making these decisions and setting these policies have not themselves been the natural storytellers. And creatives and the creative industries are often so far removed from the world of policymaking that some of the world's greatest content creators out there don't even realize the capacity they have to create stories and compelling content for good and for the betterment of society and for the health of industries. And this is especially true at a time of crisis and global recovery. So this is where Beautiful Destinations comes in. As many of you know, we do have the largest network of global travelers with 25 million people following our platforms. We were born from an Instagram account, and our agency and our creative network grew from that single Instagram account, Beautiful Destinations, which is still our hallmark account today. But what this audience gives us access to in today's world is proprietary research at a grand, vast scale that befits the connected world to really understand what's going on inside the mindset of the travelers that we're going to be needing to reach as we go through this recovery process. It also gives us the opportunity to conduct strategy at the speed that befits the 21st century. The world moves so fast today. People make up their minds so quickly. Everyone is constantly connected to digital and social media, and those inputs and that information that they're receiving is very much impacting the decisions that they're making now and in the future. And so what this means is as we're building a communication strategy, a campaign strategy, a marketing strategy to fit the policy-making decision framework and environment, we have to move fast. We don't have the benefit of time in today's world to make those decisions. And we have to understand how those decisions are changing in real time. So what that research and what that strategy then ladders up to ultimately is the jewel in the Beautiful Destinations crown. And that's our ability to tell stories, and stories that fit, again, squarely within not only the PR and marketing framework, but also within the public affairs and marketing framework of our clients. Many of us have been reading in the aviation industry about so many of the aircraft that are being parked, that are being mothballed for the moment in the world's vast deserts as we await recovery and we await demand to return. And I invite each of us to just think about what kind of imagery that conjures. There's an incredible coming together of place and of destination and of the lack of activity in a desert with an aircraft that used to be the absolute hub of activity. There's a twinge of sadness in that, and there's a twinge of nostalgia in that, but there's also a beautiful story in that, because there's an inspiration that always comes out of nostalgia for how it is that we rebuild and how it is that we shape a new future for the aviation industry and for the travel and tourism industry as a whole. And the better that we can bring together our network of strategists and content creators and researchers to bring those stories to life for the benefit of our industry, the better future we're going to be able to face long term. So again, thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to meet all of you, and I look forward to continued discussions.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for this great presentation and storytelling and how it can help us rebuild destinations, tell new stories, and integrating with new products from our tourism assets and heritage. Now, let me introduce you precisely to Vinny Lingam from Civic. We are coming back to the identity side from innovation. And thank you very much for being with us, Vinny. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Jose. And it's great to be here, everyone. I'd love to just talk about Civic and what we're doing with our health key product. Civic has been around for about 5 years. We're a blockchain-based identity company. So that really means we've been focusing on building distributed identity systems, which really is focused on privacy because we don't store data on our platform and we distribute all user data to their devices. And this is important because in a world where we're increasingly finding with the advent of COVID and other needs for digital identity that you don't want to have a honeypot. You don't want to have a place that can be hacked where all the data is being stored. Can you imagine everyone in the world's identity information is sitting in one database or even a couple of databases? It becomes problematic when those databases are hacked and health records in particular are leaked out. So we've been building this using blockchain technology, so it's not centralized in any way, shape, or form, and Civic doesn't hold data as a company. So this is our health key product. Obviously, COVID has only been around for a few months, and so we've been basically adapting our platform to deliver health key as a solution to the market needs of companies, travel companies, governments, etc., that need to do health verification. And we find that this is a great way, and like the other speakers, it's a market opportunity, I think, to help restart travel, to restart movement in everything from offices to international border travel. And so what we do is we go through the process of obviously creating a digital identity for people and then importing their health records as well, vaccination records, test results. Health keys, it's a mobile touchless privacy first solution. You download the app, it's live today. You can try it out. We use biometrics to secure the app and the data on your device. And we basically bind your medical data to your profile from your medical providers. And then we allow you to share it securely with whoever you need to share it with in a way which doesn't always share your identity. So for example, if you're going into a hotel or business, a school, you could just show that you've had a vaccine or you have antibodies and whatever their requirements are to enter without having to reveal your identity every single time. So that way you can have better data hygiene. And so, obviously this is a network effect business. So the more people who can use and interoperate with these solutions, the better. And so it's great to see other companies doing this as well. And we think that there are going to be standards that emerge that allow different providers with different products to work interoperably. So we work with a nonprofit organization called Identity.com, which allows us to pull in data and ID verification on a global scale. We can verify over 4,500 identity documents in over 190 countries around the world. And so right now the solution is available worldwide for any citizen, any country to be ID verified and import data into the platform. And so what we focus on is being global, being secure, being flexible, and using blockchain to deliver that, because by using blockchain, we can ensure that the data is as secure as possible for the needs that we think the market wants. And that's just the coverage we have in terms of ID onboarding. And so just a couple of key points here is, because the data is only ever stored on the user's device and encrypted, and we have ways of recovering it. So if a user loses their phone, drops in the ocean, whatever it is, they can restore the data only if they can pass the face map technology and recertify their information. They back up the data to their own backup storage services, so whether it's iCloud or Google Drive or whatever they want to use. So it doesn't get backed up to a central server. It's fully GDPR compliant, CCPA in California, HIPAA compliant in the US. And we have something interesting which we have using this technology, is we're able to revoke credentials. So if there's a bad test batch, for example, on testing for COVID-19, and we discover that after the fact, those keys can be revoked after the fact. So even though the user has it on their device, the validation keys can be revoked. And it's auditable, so there's a permanent record of authenticity and validity of healthcare data on device. So this really helps for when you're not storing data in a central server. How do you make sure that it's auditable? And we've solved that problem with our tech. So one of the key partners that we have is Johnson Controls. They're the largest access management company in the US. And many other parts of the world. They own Tyco as well. And so they've integrated us into their kiosks. So when you check into any one of the offices that are using their kiosk, there's no need to go to someone at the front desk anymore and have them touch your driver's license or your passport, etc. And so we can now move away from touching items to a touchless environment where you scan a QR code, you can validate your ID before you go into the building, you can validate your healthcare status. And they've got over 1,000 clients that we're rolling out to with this technology. And it really is about moving to a touchless, secure solution. And because the data isn't stored in their servers or ours, they can validate ID and healthcare data without storing it, and their customers can be compliant in terms of data storage. So we've been focusing primarily on the corporate market and the sort of B2B office space environment, factories, etc. in the US. But we are obviously looking to expand this into international markets as well. And just some other cool, fun examples that we've been working on. We actually have the ability to use your digital ID to buy beer from a vending machine. We partnered with Budweiser on this, and it was very popular. We put this up in a hotel in New York, and again, touchless environments, right? How do you get a beer out of a vending machine and prove you're over 21? We got permission from the Alcohol Beverage Commissions of New York, and we actually do this in Texas as well. And it's interesting because now you can get beer without giving any personal information. It's just proving the fact that you're over 21. You pass the biometric proof when you request the beer out of the machine, and there you go. And so this can be used for other things as well, obviously medication, etc. But it's really about limiting what personally identifiable information is shared and making it reusable so you can do it multiple times without having to re-verify yourself every single time. And we're rolling out a number of these machines right now in the tobacco industry as well, etc., as the world moves to more touchless commerce, where you just don't even touch a screen to get something out, you just scan a QR code. And I know I'm out of time, but that's you can contact us, partners@civic.com, and we're happy to engage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vinny. And coming back from the identity innovation, we are going, and the health key that you have presented to us, we are going through the hygiene of how to identify if we are washing our hands in the right way, and pretty comfortable way to train people and to make it happen in different operators and different companies from the tourism sector. Thank you very much, Diane Wilson from Hunting Scan. She's a business development director. Welcome.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to present our UNWTO winning solution. And I'm just going to get my presentation here to share. This is a joint collaboration from both Semmelweis, the Hand and Scan company, and Chameleon. And let me make it full screen. For those of you who haven't seen this presentation before, the problem that we address is the preventable spread of infection by ineffective or improper hand hygiene. Our technology-driven solution also adds marketing to support, encourage, and build confidence in returning to travel. So proper hand hygiene, as you know, is critical to most roles in travel and tourism. It keeps both passengers and guests, as well as employees, safe. You may recall that the World Health Organization this spring issued a strong appeal to improve their hand hygiene practices for all companies, particularly in tourism. Hand hygiene is identified as the single most important and effective measure to reduce the spread of infections. However, telling someone to wash their hands doesn't ensure that they'll do it effectively. Providing hand sanitizer, PPE, or gloves, it helps, but training is important, and measurement also. It's easy to get complacent. You probably sort of feel it now as we move through COVID. It's easy to get complacent or have a false sense of security when there's dispensers of hand sanitizer and signs everywhere. And they're important. I'm not saying they're not, they're very important. But the reality is when people are tested, and we've done over 15,000 people, they're leaving a lot of areas on their hands unwashed, unsanitized, and at risk. So the hand and scan technology can quickly bring a team that on average is experiencing a pass rate of 10% or lower to over 95% very quickly, and keep them there by using our automated evidence-based training technology. It's not for every time that you wash your hands. It's a training tool, and it empowers employees to learn to be safe in their work environment, but they also take this with them when they leave the workplace and wherever they go. It's helping flatten the curve and making destinations and your businesses safer. So I'd like to share a quick video that we have. It explains it best. And this is a video that is done for our global healthcare clients. So I'm going to share the video here. And
over the past, Semmelweis discovered the importance of hand hygiene in 1837, and in the late 20th century, a huge push was made to improve this as part of an effective infection prevention and control program in healthcare. However, over the past 50 years, poor hand hygiene practices have been very difficult to improve. Our solution was developed to take this approach back to first principles and ensure that good and effective technique and quality is the base of any effective hand hygiene program. Staff scan their access badge to start the training program and ensure that all data is logged to an individual and uploaded to the cloud-based software system. They simply clean their hands using the training ABHR formula. Then they insert their hands one at a time so the Semmelweis system can analyze the coverage. Results are immediately displayed on the screen, showing them how effective their technique is. Green is good, red is bad. This visual feedback and monitoring educates the user and ensures that their technique improves. Users know right away whether they fail or pass. Having used the Semmelweis solution, it is impossible not to know how good your technique is and where you need to improve to protect patients and yourself.
Let's get back to our presentation. So the system which is globally used in healthcare, is now being brought to tourism. It's a sharing of good solutions for common challenges. The reporting that you see, it's a key part of the solution, because real-time information is valuable. Everyone's busy, but this can deliver real-time information, which is helpful for health and transportation authorities, for governments, for tourism boards and management, for stakeholders, also for your customer base, and for travel agents. There's a lot of different ways to provide the information on the dashboards as well. So travelers will be reassured by enhanced safety protocols, but they need to know about them. So we partner with a digital media partner, Chameleon, and Chameleon helps companies and countries globally, including global tourism countries, global tourism clients. They help with unique location-based marketing and reports. So we have access to over 14 trillion data points, which are collected ethically and anonymously. And this allows for targeting messaging on mobile devices, which have actually visited locations or traveled on your airlines in the past 5 years. So messages are measurable, which means that you can also measure when they return to your destinations after having seen a message. So the program is put into action relatively easily, no matter if you're a destination, an airline, or an airport. First, you sign up for the subscription. It's all inclusive. We get things set up before your hand and scan machine arrives, and then your team starts scanning. As I mentioned before, people are very busy, and this can be very seamless to operate. The information immediately populates onto dashboards, and then which are available from remote, as you saw, and then the marketing promotion can begin as early as you'd like. It can be offered for and set up as an individual destination, for countries, for transportation or experiences. The device is mobile, so can be shared within locations. We're offering you proven tools to enhance safety, mitigate other outbreaks, and future waves. We want to expedite economic recovery in the travel and tourism sector. Let's reassure your visitors and your previous travelers to your airports, to your airlines, and at your destinations that they are indeed welcome back and in good hands. Here's our contact information. We welcome any opportunity to work with either airlines, airports, destinations, or partners who are working with them. As someone said today, it's about borrowing equity. I think that was Sharon and Jared. So we're very eager to do that.
Thank you very much, Diane, for your great presentation as well on how to assure and ensure that hygiene is part of our lives, especially in these COVID times. Thank you very much for all the panelists, for all the solutions that we have gathered today. As we said at the beginning, it is a priority for the World Tourism Organization to provide a wide range of opportunities for both member states, affiliate members, for public, private sector, in order to come back with tourism in the most sustainable way. Just as last part of our webinar, I would like to thank each of you from our audience in this moment. I'm really pleased. I'm very happy for having you all with the same engagement in all this time. People from the Philippines, no matter the time in difference with the United States, are engaging here, from Nepal, Sri Lanka, Panama, Colombia, North Carolina, and if I keep reading, from many other places and from the Middle East as well. So thank you very much. All of you who registered will be receiving great information from our webinar all the contact details for all these companies, for making sure to have it in your pocket just in case you need it to deliver impact. Thank you very much. And just there's a question that I think would be great both for ICF or each of the solutions, whoever would love to answer it, and it's how these strategies or solutions may be deployed or implemented with difference into emerging and mature destinations. Somebody's up to answer this question?
I can start, Jose.
Okay, go ahead, please.
So for our solutions, I don't think that there's a really big difference between more mature or emerging destinations. I think it's a matter of the destination's choice to kind of roll out the program. I think from a mobile technology perspective, one of the benefits is that it is pretty globally pervasive, regardless of the maturity of the destination. And so there is a little bit of a tie-in if there does need to be some investment in biometric hardware, if that's the choice of the destination in terms of how to deploy it. But from a app adoption and ability to share with, say, a destination's central database, or sharing with public health officials or anything like that, the good news is I don't think that there's a huge difference, at least from our digital identity perspective, in terms of how that can be adopted. In terms of, especially if it's passport based, if it's a local ID, the local destination would have to work, with a solution like ours in order to make sure that data is available for confirmation on a consent basis. But again, I don't think that there would be a massive adoption difference.
Thank you very much, Jessica. So for all destinations, open for digital identity solutions. So innovation for all of you. Anybody else that would love to answer?
Jose, I'm happy.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in from a storytelling perspective. There's a huge difference. And I would so agree with Jessica, especially having a background in tech. When it comes to technology, the goal is to be able to work seamlessly across all countries, and that's where the scale comes in. With creative development and storytelling, I think the big difference in terms of destinations, emerging versus highly developed, is generally speaking, a highly developed destination will already have an association within the public imagination for what that destination is. And so either what you're doing is you're looking to enhance and expand upon that imagination, or that is not helpful to you and you want to change tack, in which case you first need to kind of take people down from what they currently associate your destination with and bring them into a new place. Whereas for an emerging market, you're much more starting from a clean slate. And in that case, if you're showing, for example, a beautiful image from a desert that reminds people of the Grand Canyon, and you're in Azerbaijan, you need to take people on a journey to help them understand where you are and how to situate you within the world. So that clean slate provides both an opportunity, but then also the challenge, because you're having to introduce a place for the first time. So I would say from our perspective, those two value propositions are quite different. We really enjoy working across both, but they do offer very different approaches.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. From this perspective, from the storytelling side, and anybody else from their solution or ICF? Go ahead, Diane.
I'm just going to jump in quickly, but sort of adding to what Elizabeth had said, if you have an emerging market and you're working with a clean slate, there may not be an established perception that hygiene in that country is something that is strong. And so with the Semmelweis score and with the borrowed equity from Hand and Scan, you can just add that in seamlessly to remove that kind of potential concern and integrate it and just focus on delivering your destination. So we work with both, different focus.
Thank you very much, Diane, for your input in this discussion. Would you and another person would like to jump in?
Sure, I can jump in. This is Shannon from ICF. I think, you know, everything that Elizabeth said is so true. And that is where, at least the work that we do, I think the brand identity and the brand strategy work, you know, really helps us inform really either what an emerging, actually, and Belize was a good example of an emerging market where they didn't really have a brand identity. They were really just trying to sort of do what they thought their competitors were doing. And that was really not the way to stand out and be distinctive, especially when you don't have the budget that your competitors have. And then, you know, that brand strategy work also plays into a developed market as well, and really being able to shift if you need to shift, you know, how you're perceived. We do, you know, a lot of persona development and competitive analysis, and really kind of finding your point of differentiation in either case, but it's just, it's, you know, it's a different challenge.
Thank you very much, Shannon. So would anybody else would love to say something before closing our webinar? Okay, I think then we have covered all the points from today's topic of the tourism tech adventure and aviation technologies. I hope all this information is pretty useful for you. And the positive comments from the audience that they have found very useful information for travel and post-COVID-19 world. Thank you very much to you all, and see you in the next TDA from the World Tourism Organization.
Thank you, Jose. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks again, Jose.